Good morning, everyone. For those of you here on the West Coast, good afternoon. To those of you on the East Coast, good night. To the European community, good morning, or whatever to the community out in Australia, wherever else you are. Hi, I'm Laura Rubinstein here with Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. We are excited to have another fabulous episode of Transform Your Relationships Live. Hi, Roberta.
Hi, Laura. And yeah, it is a fabulous episode because we're going to talk about trust. And sometimes we kind of step gently around that topic. And today we want to jump right into it.
Yes, and sometimes we jump right into trust, and sometimes we don't. And it's navigating this world of trust is a really good discussion because I think everybody has their own philosophy on it. Some people think about it. Some people, I've heard people say, I just trust too easily. So if you know
Yes.
that about yourself, what do you do about it? So where should we start thinking about trust? Let's define it. Let's get on the same page.
Well, it's very elusive to define trust, but it's a feeling of being safe with another human being, that they are going to keep that safety for you, that you could count on them, that you're safe with them. You can talk about things with them. You can know that they'll have your back and that they'll defend you or protect you or whatever. And then there's everything in between, from those people who will throw you under the bus to those who will protect you with their life. So it's very important to know how to calibrate who you can trust.
So, where do we start? How do we calibrate? How do we know if we can trust someone?
Well, let's start with what you brought up, Laura, because it's such a good point. Those people who they're like warm puppy dogs. They just trust everybody immediately. And, I think that's a really good starting place for all of us. Why not accord trust to people? Why not give that gift and then don't fall asleep? Be awake. Is my trust still safe? Is it still well placed? And you just keep thinking about that. Like, oh, when things go a little bit sideways, you talk about it, you bring it up, you paint it red and make a conversation, you have some boundaries, and then you see, does that person honor the boundaries and the agreements that we have? Great. Then I can continue to enrich the relationship by, even when there's something that goes a bit sideways, it deepens our relationship. It strengthens our relationship. But people have this little tendency to, when things go a little bit sideways, they either blame themselves or they think, oh, that person's just having a bad day. And that may be the case, but you have to be careful because it could be a red flag.
Red flags are very key. I think they are especially critical in the beginning of a relationship when people, you're in that rose-colored glasses falling in love with the person. And I'm not just talking about romantic. I'm talking about, when you're really getting to know someone, you really like them and they're charming and they're giving and they're saying great
Talking a good game.
well, saying great things about you. They're introducing you to people. They're generous with you. Um, but then at some point, maybe something goes awry or something happens and you just, like you said, give them the benefit of the doubt. But without noting it, it could happen again and again and again and again. And then you're like, before you know it, it's like totally betrayed.
Mm-hmm. And giving the benefit of the doubt is great as long as there is a conversation about it,
Mm.
right? Like, did this just happen because this is how it felt to me? And you just talk about yourself. Like, we've talked so much about the personal weather report. So you just say, wow, that felt a little strange to me. It felt like somehow we weren't on the same page or whatever. How did it feel to you? And so you engender a conversation about it. That's the key. You don't just go, oh, well, and take it on yourself, because far too many people are very willing to make everything their fault.
Yes. And in a great relationship, we can call each other on our stuff and it's safe and it's okay to do so. I think it's a red flag that if you call someone on something in a gentle, nice way by taking it on, here's how it occurred to me. I wanted to check in with you about why this happened. Then if that's not okay conversation, or that conversation gets skirted or not acknowledged, that's a big flag. It's saying, wait, the trust level might want to be lowered a little bit. And a
Mm-hmm.
little bit and a little bit. And what does it mean to lower a trust level versus run for the hills? I think there are things we can talk about here.
Well, that's a really good point, because it's not like, oh, you did that to me, I'm out of here. I mean, certainly if something major, awful happens and you can't have a conversation about it because the person won't admit it happens, that may be a really good moment to say, I don't think this will work for me. But what's important is to be able to say, okay, if I can trust, how much can I trust? What can I trust them with? Like, in any healthy relationship, we have people that we disclose personal things to, and then we have people that we don't. And it's not that there's something wrong with the ones that we don't, it's a different kind of relationship. And so that's what I mean by calibrating our trust, is like, what's this really about? To be more conscious of our relationships. To really think about, okay, what is this relationship for? What is the expectations of each party? Where do we think we're going with this relationship? And am I awake and aware and alive and alert to what's actually going on?
I love that, calibrating the trust, or I made a little phrase here, adjust your trust level, which is
Nice.
about how vulnerable you are to that person, how much you give back to that person, how much you allow them to, the word isn't great, get away with, but how much leeway you give them. Because if
Mm-hmm.
it's someone whose trust really is not, I don't want to say deserved, but is not matching the level of what you're giving, because they keep pushing a boundary, or they keep disappointing you, or you keep feeling hurt when they do things, that's a good sign that something needs to be adjusted over here in the calibration area.
Mm-hmm.
Disclose less, offer less, give less time, that kind of thing.
Sure. And, to revisit the idea that you don't have to close out these relationships, you simply give them different terms. If somebody is very loose-lipped, you tell them something and you say, this is between us, and then you hear it tomorrow from somewhere else, then that's something you do two things with. You observe that it occurred, and you make a decision if you're going to bring it up or if you're just going to observe. So I just want to make an addition to what I said earlier. In some relationships, you don't call everybody on it. A new relationship, you don't call people on it. You observe. Oh, okay, that happened. So then I make up my mind. I don't have to negotiate the relationship.
And this happens all the time in business. And a lot of times when things happen, it's because commitments were made that really couldn't be kept. And you'll lose people's trust, and that's okay. You have to just acknowledge to yourself what you can keep, and the other person needs to acknowledge what they can keep and make a new agreement that's realistic. So a lot of times I think trust, and I think you've said this, Roberta, is an opportunity, you did say it, to deepen and enrich a relationship. So a breakdown could lead to a breakthrough. So I want to invite people to not be so afraid of, trusting other people, or making agreements with other people that they feel they might break. Just you do make your best effort towards that, your best intention, go for it on both ends, and then keep aware, like you said, acknowledge what's so, make it, and renegotiate. We've had other live streams on negotiation. How to have those conversations, but this today is all about identifying, how do we know if we can trust somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I like to say, and in the feminine power cards, one of them says, to um, it's like, to receive more trust, be more trustworthy.
Exactly. And I definitely wanted to add that to the conversation, because you're only going to be able to trust someone else to the degree to which you trust yourself. And that's the case in all cases of every attribute. But if you don't trust yourself, then you're going to be suspect of everybody else. So the first contribution you have to make to the relationship is to be trustworthy. And sometimes you have to have a little sit down and a quiet cup of herbal tea with yourself to say, am I really trustworthy? And then what am I bringing to the relationship? I wrote a book in 2002, I think it's called What You Pay Attention to Expands. And wherever you're going to put energy, where energy flows, where the focus goes, energy flows kind of thing. And if we're saying, can I trust you to everybody that we see? You've got some work to do inside. If you're a suspect of everybody, then something has happened to you in your life that you don't trust the world, you don't trust life, you may not trust other people because you don't trust yourself. And that's not like the bottom line, the only thing. Maybe you trust yourself, but you're not good at calibrating trust in other people. So it's not either or, it could be both. But a very important starting place is, am I trustworthy? And then how do I decide if someone else is trustworthy? And what are my boundaries about that? When do I know to speak up?
Oh, these are such good questions. If you don't have a journal, write these down. I think we should have a journal exercise every time with these questions. Like, am I trustworthy? I found the Feminine Power card that says to attract trustworthy people in your life, be more trustworthy. And on the back it says, how can I develop more trust in myself? It's a contemplation question. It's a question for you to sit with that cup of coffee, maybe we jot down the answers on a journal notepad or what have you, or just plant it in the back of your mind. Ask yourself that question for 30 seconds. Don't worry about the answer. It's planted. Your brain will go to work on it. If you're not getting anything coming up, if you are, let's embody that.
And here's a good question to ask yourself to start. Do I keep my promises to myself? Okay, it doesn't have to be earth-shattering stuff. If you decide that you're going to sit down in the evening and read your book for an hour in front of the fire and just relax, do you allow other things to come in front of that and other people and their demands or their wishes or whatever? And that's great if you make a conscious decision to exchange the time that you have decided to give to yourself to give to someone else. But be conscious of whether or not you keep your promises to yourself, because that is one of the ways that you demonstrate that you can trust yourself.
Yeah, and I would encourage, if that's like a yes or no emphatic, especially if it's a no, what are the promises I make to myself and how can I keep them?
Mm-hmm.
So open it
And,
up.
I think it's a good time of year to be talking about that because we've just been through that. I don't know what to call it. It's not my favorite thing. Time when people are encouraged to make resolutions, and they've already broken them. I mean, it's the end of January, and so then they're like, okay, well, I'll start again next year. But ask yourself, okay, if I broke them, did I set an unrealistic expectation of myself, and therefore it was never going to be part of what I could possibly pull off? Or did I really not believe that? Was it a should that I thought I should do that? It's not part of who I am or who I want to be. Or maybe it's something I really need to work at and I have to notice that I put it off. I procrastinated it. I made excuses for it. I rationalized it or justified it. And maybe I'd like to start again on that one right now. And you can.
Yep. So developing trust in others starts with yourself, just to recap a bit. And what I hear is it important? Is this promise I made to myself important? And it's not here to beat ourselves up about it, right? It's about developing the ability to be more trustworthy. Now, I also want to say, I believe that what it is to be human is to be out of, breaking these promises. It's just, we make a lot of promises to ourselves.
Yeah.
We keep a lot of promises. We don't keep all promises to ourselves. And like you said, there's reasons for it. Some we're conscious of, some we're not. And if we can get a little bit more conscious of it and not make certain promises to ourselves, life feels a lot more fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
When we can make the promises to ourselves that we can keep, and that we intend to keep, and that we do our best to keep.
And a great way to approach that, which is really wise, what you're saying, I think, Laura, is to chunk them down. I wrote a little book called pack your own parachute and how to make sure that you're safe in the world. And in there, I talked about breaking things down into what I call TTDCs. And TTDCs are teeny tiny doable chunks. So instead of like this huge goal that you want to go, okay, let me take a little part of that and get that going and demonstrate that I can fit that in, and I will stick to that, and then I'll do a little more and enlarge it till I get to the big one. Because we have this tendency to go, wow, I'm going to make this major change. And major changes are really difficult. And then when you don't do it, you just gave yourself the message that you can't trust yourself. And you may not think about it in those terms, but that's what happens to you emotionally. That's what's happening internally. So you want to be really aware, really conscious of how you make promises and how you keep them. And if you need to chunk them down into teeny tiny doable chunks, I advise that. Maybe you can't get it all done today, but you can get a part of it done today. I have new software that is called Sorted, and you put it in your Gmail, and every morning it comes up with a beautiful, I suppose it's supposed to be the sun, and it says, what will you focus on today? And I love that because it doesn't make a to-do list. It doesn't make anything. It just says, what will you focus on today? So every morning it tells me, have a thought. Be more conscious about what this day is going to bring for you intentionally, because you're always bringing up the idea of intentionality, and that's so important. And then you begin to say, okay, I know what the focus is. Maybe you start that way.
Love it. Love it. Start with an intention. And we're here to support you on a regular basis. I wanted to mention our website so you can get that support beyond today. forrelationshiphelp.com is where you can find Dr. Rhoberta and all her wisdom, blogs, giveaways, her Hijackal help information, so much more. Anything else you want to add about what they can find here?
No, just go over there and have a look, or listen to my radio show, the Relationship Help Show. You'll find that there too. There's a little tab that says radio.
And you can, I mentioned the Feminine Power Cards. If you're interested in them, they're at femininepowercards.com. And if you want to read any blogs about business and lots of social media content, how to do online marketing, transformtoday.com is for you.
Yes, and we love to hear from you. We love to hear from you right here. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. We're happy to answer them. Or after the show, if you're listening later, and we still go back in there and answer what it is you put in the comments. So interact with us. Maybe you have an idea for another show. Maybe you have a question you'd like us to answer. We're really open. We're here for you. And we want to do that. So do interact with us, please.
Yeah. Hope you enjoyed this rich conversation about deepening trust, because when you deepen trust, I think the world works better. Would you agree?
I do. And on a couple of levels. First of all, the trust with yourself. When you start to become conscious and really aware of what's going on in this realm with yourself, you can start to deepen and enrich in all the words that we've put on it. And then you'll feel more confident. You'll feel more secure. You'll feel more sure of yourself. And you'll know how to present yourself to other people better. You will be able to let people know what your boundaries are. All of these things come from trusting yourself. Knowing what's okay for you, knowing what you value, knowing what's good. All of these things are integral and integrated. And we need all of those pieces. And the second part is that maybe in your life somewhere, and we've talked about this so much, Laura, maybe in your life somewhere you had a difficult, toxic person. And that person early on in your life gave you the distinct feeling, even before you had language or rational linear thought, when your prefrontal lobes developed at 7 or 8 years old, gave you the feeling that the world is an untrustworthy place, or that you are untrustworthy, or that you're not worth bothering with. And if any of those things happen to you, you can change that. But it requires sitting down. Laura says coffee, go for that if you want, but I'd rather you didn't stimulate yourself. I'd rather you had a couple herbal tea and sit down and say, okay, let me just spend a little time with myself. How am I on this trust thing? Where did I get the messages that I run on? Where did I get the insights? Where did I get the feelings? Because when we're that little tiny baby and we're in a home where there's bickering going on, or maybe we weren't wanted, or maybe the parents are in uproar, we're taking that in through our very pores, all of our senses. We don't have any way of calibrating this. We're brand new to the world. We're learning and we're learning who we are. And these things get into our consciousness early, early, early on, and we might not even realize they're there. So spending time with yourself and finding out, did I get some of this malware installed when I was young? Maybe I'd like to replace it. Very important, especially when we're talking about trust. Because if you couldn't trust those giants when you were young, you're not going to trust the other people out there now that you're a giant.
Giant advice.
Well, it's important, isn't it?
It is. It's way important. What we've been talking about. This is life-changing important, because when you become conscious of how much you trust yourself, how much you trust others, your whole life can shift. I mean, if you had a pattern of not trusting other people or being too trustworthy, that's a pattern. Let's stop it. Let's get something more.
Or being too trusting, like you go to a networking meeting and you believe everybody there has your best interest at heart. And so you just want to talk to this person and that person and the other person, and you think you've already made an assumption that they like you and they want to work with you and they're collaborative, and you have to calibrate all that. Are they really wanting to be collaborative, or are they wanting business from you or with you? I mean, all of these things play into the understanding of trust that you have. And if you're like that warm puppy who is just like, oh, come on, I'm friendly, everybody come and play with me, you'll be really disappointed by the people who just really want you to play their game. So you have to be awake and know what's going on. It's not about good or bad or right or wrong. It's about awareness.
And then having a strategy to deal with whatever you become aware of. So if you become aware of someone's more opportunistic versus collaborative, you may want to step away from that conversation. You can do that gracefully. But then you're empowered. You're like, yeah, I left an uncomfortable situation and I can now go talk to somebody else who would be a better fit to collaborate.
And if that person is a new person in your life, there's no need to have a conversation with them about how you wish they were.
Right. No.
Just let that go. And I can't say enough about that, Laura, because we have this need to fix people, and don't bother with them. Just observe what they do and say, not for me. Don't make them wrong. None of that. Just not for me.
Yeah. And that's how we take care of ourselves. That's how we honor other people and their journeys. And we'll build our trust one aligned action at a time. And yes, I love the idea of herbal tea. I don't even drink coffee. So it's just doing that as a habit. See how we are? We're just creatures of habit. So
yeah.
Well,
I think it's important, a really important discussion, as you said. But being on really good terms with yourself is really important. And so many people are so busy being on terms with other people, life, commitments, and everything, that they don't take the time to be on really intimate terms with themselves. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What do I need? What do I want? Accord yourself that time. Demonstrate to yourself that you're important. It's essential to having the life you long for.
And on that note, we are going to be talking on the day before Valentine's Day more about how to really love up yourself and be your own best Valentine and live what you were talking about just then.
Yes, it'll be a great conversation, and I hope you join us for it.
All right, so we'll see you on February 13th. In the meantime, visit our websites, and if you have comments, please put them in here. We're here for you. Transformtoday.com. You can find me. For relationshiphelp.com, you can find Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. Have a wonderful, magnificent, trustworthy day.
Yes, and enjoy yourself.
Bye for now.